Our presenter is Courtney Spivey. She's a graduate student here at the University of Tulsa who actually graduated just, I want to say last year, a few years ago.
Yes.
But she is a triple major TU alumni with degrees in graphic design, computer gaming, and simulation development, like I'm doing, and applied mathematics, which is important whenever you're working on games. And currently, she's actually at the University of Abertay studying a professional master's in game development. And so she's going to be giving a talk today on her path to becoming a full-fledged game designer. And I think that'll be interesting, seen through the eyes of somebody who is still currently working on it and developing their own skills and making their way in the, quite frankly, competitive world of game design. So I'm really excited to see what Courtney has to say.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, with Courtney Spivey, I've only talked to her maybe like one or two times, but every time that I have spoke with her, she has been a gifted game designer just from talking to her. So I really appreciate that she's given the time to speak with us. So without further ado, just give it away for Courtney Spivey.
My name is Courtney Spivey, and I am excited to talk to you guys today about my experience doing a master's course in game development. So I am a former TU graduate. I'm currently doing a master's course in game dev at the University of Abertay in Scotland, which is on the Princeton's review list of like top colleges for game design. So today I'm going to be talking a little bit about my experiences and how I came about this master's degree. And if I'm looking over to the sides, because I've got a lot of footnotes, because I've got to talk for 40 minutes, so I need to have some summaries over there. So a table of contents, I will go into 4 sections. Firstly, I'll talk about my background, how I basically got to this degree. And some of you guys will be familiar with that, hopefully. Then I will talk about projects that I have done and explain the roles that I've played for each of these team games that I've created. And then I'll go into what I've learned and what failed, what succeeded, et cetera, et cetera. And then lastly, I'll give you guys some tips and tricks about some pretty standard advice, nothing like revolutionary here. It's just what I've learned throughout my time as a student and applicant for jobs. So here is a quote that I think is very relevant to game development. And it is, creativity is inventing, experimenting, growing, taking risks, breaking rules, making mistakes, and having fun. So a lot about the journey to the destination and not so much about the start and the end of a product. That's basically how I think of game development. And I think that really sums up my time as a game designer / artist / writer. And yeah, I just really think that this quote can be applied to all of game development and the industry in general. So moving on. Firstly, I am going to go into things that I've done. This includes things that I've attempted, things that I definitely failed at, things that I fortunately succeeded in. And to the right, this is a picture of my current logo that I've made for myself. It's like a circled out sun or moon or whatever. It's abstract with a snake on it. But if you squint, you can see a C and an S, which are my initials, Courtney Spivey. And yeah, I made it because, I don't know, I think it just looks kind of cool. I think it looks pretty elegant, pretty sleek. Not to toot my own horn or anything, but I think it's a good combination of my Asian background and culture paired with a cutthroat sort of modern style of Western aesthetic that I really, really appreciate from my time as learning to be a graphic designer here. So to preface this entire presentation, because I haven't done that enough already, unlike most people in industry, when I first entered college, I had like almost no gaming experience. Like think Cool Math for Kids, like Yahoo Games, Fireboy Water Girl. And I also knew exactly why I wanted to be in the game industry, which is kind of odd. This is not to say that I had an easy, clear-cut experience just because I knew why exactly I wanted to be in the game industry, right? But to sum it up, initially it was because I really wanted to be a storyteller and an artist. I looked into the entertainment industry, film industry, whatever, and I found the film world to be really oversaturated, prestigious, and expensive. I was like, oh, there's no way I could be a part of giant blockbuster movies or whatever. And then the writing world, it was kind of fading out, in my opinion, because everyone was using YouTube and Netflix all over the place. But like, obviously, you still need screenwriters and stuff. At the time, I wasn't aware of that because I was a dumb little freshman. And then the art world, I found it to be kind of like rolling a dice. You could be really successful, or you could like struggle for money your entire life. And I was too scared to take risks like that. So in my opinion, animation would have been a reasonable path with my interests, but I absolutely have no patience for drawing frame by frame cartoons. To me, I just can't do it. And I mad props to anyone who can, because that is an incredible skill that takes a lot of time, right? And then on the other hand, I was also really fascinated with hard science and math. So I'd always loved learning about theoretical physics and math, even though I wasn't really good at physics at all. And computer science was like a black box to me going in because I didn't know anything about it. I thought that in this like tech heavy world and society that we live in at this point, it would be a detriment to me personally if I didn't know anything about computer science. So I decided to go into this field. And coming from an Asian American background as well, I will admit I did hold just a little bit more prestige and value to hard sciences and analytical fields, just because of my family's background and upbringing. So in the end, I did decide on a double major in graphic design and computer gaming and simulation, the development course at the University of Tulsa, because I was unwilling to really let either side of my brain take reign. This would be both extremely beneficial and incredibly detrimental moving onwards in my career, and I will explain why. But hopefully this PowerPoint presentation can help you guys make better decisions than me. That's the whole point of this. So firstly, background. What happened in school, right? To walk you through my academic journey, let's just go over a condensed version of my trials and tribulations. So as a preface, I know a lot of people that already knew as much as me, and they did so much more than me. And I also know a lot of people who do so much less. So if you're looking at this PowerPoint, you're going, oh my God, don't worry. I just took a very meandering route to get where I am. And you absolutely don't need to do the same thing. But I am a pessimist. So I took a very disaster prep route. I'm not saying what I did was the right thing, but some of the more proactive measures that I took really did help me at each of the new stages of my career, as academic and otherwise, right? So the preparations obviously begins in high school. By senior year, I took 10 AP tests, mostly in history, art, music theory, some science, math, and Chinese. I passed 8 of them. The 2 courses that I absolutely failed were AP Chem and Calc PC. Chemistry, I had a lovely teacher. She had a really nice Southern accent, and I would just fall asleep in class because it was so soothing. So that wasn't well for me for the AP test. And then for Calc BC, I went from pre-calculus to Calc BC. So I completely skipped over Calc AB because I wanted to quote unquote save time. And that did not work out for me in the long term because I took like a whole semester making up Calc 1 and Calc 2 in college. So yeah. See, so that put my enrollment at TU as a sophomore because I came in with so many credits. So definitely I did have an advantage coming in. Freshman year, I was obsessively planning my courses to the T in order to graduate on time because I had 2 majors in 2 different colleges and they all had different requirements, right? So I was juggling marching band, orchestra, and then 18 credit hours every single semester. And so I was a maniac. I realized this is not sustainable. So sophomore year, I cut out one of the band stuff. I quit marching band. I was only in orchestra. And then I did unfortunately stretch myself. Then I was the VP of 2 classes and 2 courses, clubs, sorry. And unfortunately, I got mono. I don't know how, don't know why, don't want to talk about it. Moving on. That led me to fail a class in a test in Calc 3 because I was very sick and I couldn't study for it. Because of that, I was going to fail Calc 3 right off the bat. It was another math class. And I was like, oh no, I can't do this. I'm not going to be able to graduate on time. It would have been an absolute disaster if I had given up on the spot right there, both for me, like career-wise and financially, because I am a scholarship student and time management is very important when you are on a scholarship, right? So while I was recovering from said mono, I came up with a reroute and I decided to go abroad for the summer to take more classes. And also, you know, if you get to travel to different countries while you're in school, that's so fun. You get to hit 2 birds with 1 stone, right? To be honest, that was the best decision I've ever made because I took Renaissance art history class in Italy, and if you've been to Italy, you know that is the perfect class to take in that country. And so I absolutely had a blast. Afterwards, I backpacked through 4 other countries in Europe, and I took so many pictures, and it was really, really fun. And it ended up working really well in my favor because I didn't give up when I had all of these disasters all pile on me all at the same time. So that is advice for anyone who is in a hard place right now. Junior year was when I focused more on coursework because my classes started to get more specialized and harder towards my various degrees. This is when I was taking classes like game engine, some 3D modeling classes, a lot of specific art-based coursework in graphic design like typography and Adobe heavy courses, and then higher level mathematics, which was so much more fun than calculus, in my opinion. So taking all of those courses were obviously a lot more fun than the basics, but it was harder work. That year, I also did participate in Turk research with Professor Valero in the art college, who just recently retired from what I've heard, but she was great. Combining both art and computer science coursework and into my research for artificial general intelligence, my big question was, can the robots that were displayed in Detroit Become Human, can they exist by the year 2048? That was my research question. And the answer is definitely no, and definitely not by 2048. So in case you were wondering. And then because everything was going so well, I decided to add a math major because I had only 2 more classes or 3 more classes to take, and then I would have been able to check that box off as well and get that bachelor's. So yeah. Senior year, I started looking for jobs in the game industry. The few interviews that I had with bigger companies like PlayStation and Microsoft, they both ended unsuccessfully. With PlayStation, I applied as a game designer. The person emailed me back saying, okay, we'll have a phone interview with you. Just make sure you are ready to talk about your resume, your background, and your experiences as a game designer so far. I get on the call, 3 people are in the call with me, and they're all dudes. They're all very intimidating. They all introduce themselves like, hello, I am the current vice president of the PlayStation branch in Oregon, and I have this master's degree from like Carnegie Mellon. Like all of them had really, really big titles, and I, off the bat, was so intimidated. And then they started asking me technical Unity questions. They were like, "What is delta time?" And I just went, "Oh, I am so sorry. I thought this was a more like personal interview. Like this wasn't a technical interview as far as I was concerned. I had asked your person who set me up." And they responded with, "Well, okay, let's talk about your resume then." And then they just absolutely went in. They went, "Why are you doing 3 different majors? What do you actually want to do? What can you bring to our company?" And my naive self, I said, "I can be whatever you want me to be. I am this mold ready to be shaped by you." And they were like, "Definitely not. We're looking for someone that we don't have to train the entire time that we're giving them an internship. So I'm sorry." They basically rejected me on the spot. But from that interview, I carried a very valuable lesson home, and it's don't really be a jack of all trades because you end up being a master of none, unfortunately. So the interview with Microsoft was a little different. I made it to the final round. They flew me out to Washington, D.C., and then they told me, "Hey, you don't have healthcare experience, so sorry, we picked someone else." So that wasn't as intensive, but still disappointment. And then COVID hit before I applied for any more jobs. And that's when I decided, no, I will not be looking for jobs in this economy where United States stock market decided to go skydiving. So I decided to go to Abertay University instead. So now I'm getting my professional master's in game development. I've participated in a lot of game jams, one where my team placed second. And as a result, they gave us all of this Alienware tech, merch, or whatever awards. That was really, really fun. It got me hooked on making games for game jams. And then I've worked on 2 larger production games for my coursework so far. And next semester, I will be interning with a game company, depending on how well I pitch myself to them. So now I'm going to talk about things that I've attempted, things that were successful, and things that I absolutely failed, just to be brutally honest. So things that I attempted. I applied to about 50 companies seriously. If you include all of the job applications I just threw into the wind, like I just submitted my PDF resume and then hoped for the best, I would put that number around 100 actually. And as you can see, that's not the way you should do it. I made it to the second round, to the technical interviews, and passed that for 15 of them, and 3 of them made it to the final round. I wasn't accepted at any of them, and before I had a chance to apply for more, once I graduated, COVID hit, and I lost all motivation. So, and they were mostly jobs in the software engineering and management department, so it wasn't even game related. Because I knew in my heart of hearts that I did not have enough experience to actually be in the game industry. Then I did also attempt to create my own games. I never had time to make my own projects because I was doing 3 majors, and involved in clubs, band, extracurricular, and volunteer work. So I am making game design documents left and right, and a whole bunch of tiny Unity snippet games to showcase my ideas for a better portfolio when I do apply for jobs again in May and onwards. Then I did also attempt to make a portfolio. This, I would say, is more successful. I've always used my Behance profile for the past 6 years or so for my art portfolio. And recently I've created a website, and I also have a very extensive CV. And the best way to go about making a resume for yourself is write down literally every single skill you've had, every single award that you have, all of the projects that you've done, all of the jobs you've held, and then tailor them into separate documents for different roles, and then apply to different companies with different positions with your different resumes that are more condensed and smaller. That's my advice on portfolios and resumes. And then I also applied to 2 graduate universities because applying to universities costs money. I didn't want to apply to too many. So I went down the Princeton review list, basically. I applied to the first one in the United States, and I applied to the first one out of the United States. And that happened to be UCF and Abertay University. I did get into both of them. University of Central Florida has a 2-year program, and their out-of-state tuition is triple the tuition rate of Abertay University as an international student. So I made a financial decision to go to Abertay. Yeah, that's basically how I ended up in this master's degree. Also, it's only a year, which is really surprising for grad degrees in general. What I did fail at, if I haven't hinted at it enough, I did not get a job. This is a combination of me having too general of a skill set and not having any specializations, and COVID-19, right? I did not figure out my specialization until now. So having 3 majors proves that, yes, you're hardworking. Yes, you can do everything, but it also gives you way too much freedom. When people ask you, when employers ask you, what are you going to do for us? You can't say literally anything you want me to do unless you're starting up an indie company yourself and you've got to juggle all of these roles, which is totally fine if you have the financial backing and time to do it. But for me, I don't. So don't do that. And then playing more games. Surprisingly, you need to play games to make games. I don't know if you're aware of that, but it's always a really good excuse to play more games, especially for us in the games environment. It's like a fun little requirement you can blow off your coursework with. Just don't do it too much. But now I've dragged myself through the mud. I'll talk a little bit about what I did succeed in doing. Because of my very sporadic branching of works and courses that I've taken, I did build a very strong foundation and an impressive resume for game design. So I specialized and learned many different things from so many different fields, all related to gaming in some way, fortunately. So I can make realistic game design decisions because I do understand each discipline's pipeline. This comes with like programming constraints and challenges, artists, pipelines. I will admit 3D art is something that I am not too familiar with still, and that pipeline is incredibly intensive, from making the art to all the way having it in level design in Unity, with gray boxing, and stuff like that. Okay. And then I did acquire skills as a writer, a coder, and an artist, all of which are crucial to game designers for their toolkits. I did also create a specialized portfolio website now for future job applications. I will be going through that website with you guys in a moment here, but I did make it. And I have, at this point, specialized in something. I have specialized in game design. So the University of Tulsa did help me build a really strong technical background for both me in art and in computer science. But Abertay University has helped me bridge this gap between the academic aspect of learning and then the actual implementation of game projects that have taught me through hands-on work, teamwork, and just like time. So now this is the heavier chunk of my presentation, which is my works. This first section is my portfolio website, and then the second section will be the games that I've worked on. Okay, so this is the structure of my website. I've got the header, navigation. I've got the get to know me, which is section off into my homepage and about me. And then the other side is my works, which is my game projects and my artworks. My game projects are the most extensive part of my website, as you can see. So I've got all of the big games that I've worked on in their own separate pages. And then at the bottom is a footer. This is also kind of how my website looks like. So now I will actually take you to the website. I have it pulled up here. Sorry if my voice is like gross by the end of this. I'm not used to talking so long during quarantine times. But at the top, you can see fake reviews that hopefully will be populated with real reviews when I do work with more people and I force them to give me quotes. And then there's my signature logo with my signature font, and it describes who I am. I'm a game designer, an artist, and I am a hobby programmer. I've got it split into the 4 sections, and this is my homepage, right? So I open up with a, hi, this is my website. Glad you're here. I am currently a student. These are my skills, and this is what I would like to work on, right? And then I've got recent achievements, and you can go to my resume. And my resume is just literally copy pasted my PDF just on the website. So going back to the homepage. We then have the miscellaneous section where I tell my employers, hey, I am a human being, and look, I am fun because I like drawing and I like writing. I also try to be relatable by saying what games I've played and how you can reach me. And then here's more like a slideshow of things that I've done and things that are in progress. And you can click on it to go to any of these right now, but we're not going to do that just for demonstration purposes. And then this is the end of the homepage. It's fairly simple. And at the bottom, I explain how I made this website, and the GitHub repository has literally every single file of this website. So if you guys want to like use it or whatever, feel free to click on that link. And going back to this, here's about me. So I basically have 3 big bullet points, and then I've got fancy layouts to say, yes, I am a graphic designer as well. Basically, I've always participated in clubs. I love teamwork. That's this first section. And then the second section is, I like knowing how to make games, and I'm always learning. And then this last section, it's like, I'm a STEAM advocate, and I really think that inclusion is key in the future of gaming. And I talk a little bit about that as well. I do need to actually move the testimonials up to the top of the About Me, because I don't know if people are going to scroll through all of this text, but we do have one real testimonial, which I forced my friend to give me. But yeah, and this is the heavier section, which is the game projects portion of my website. So each of my games with a trailer, if they have one, for all of these games, and then you can click on them to read more. But if we just go down and explore through some of these games, and it's loading because it's slow. And it's still loading. Okay, but this is kind of the meaty part of where I demonstrate my skills, and so it's kind of like a progress report of sorts of what I did and how I did it of each game. And this is the first big game. Overview, screenshots, responsibilities, trials and tribulations, drawings, concluding thoughts, and then you can get to the game. And yeah, and then the last section is just a gallery, because I do draw a lot of art. So I have some of my best works here, but I do need to update this as well. But yeah, moving back, quickly talk about my design choices for this website. So I am a fan of material design, but I do love brutalism a lot. And I find the breaking of standard layouts to be incredibly satisfying, because even though it might look broken, if it's not carefully done, if it is planned intentionally, it feels really future forward. I also took a really long time to find the background color of my website, and even now I'm still open to changing it. I did really want to make the background really dark gray, but the feedback given to other people in my university said this is not going to work, so I didn't do that. The color combinations on my website are very standard, just white, gray, gray, red, and black, right? I picked those colors because no matter what art I put up, the website will still be standing out, but it won't overpower whatever art that I have on the page, right? I also designed the navigation bar with the idea of capturing someone's attention as soon as they landed on my website. So you can see the logo with my name on it. Like, it is the most eye-catching thing, in my opinion, besides the other design choices of my website. I think that leaves an impression for employers as they go through my website. And then I also design, like, a quick hack for designing things is if you don't know how to do things, use borders, but use them well, right? So this is like it's kind of like a rough template for me for making different elements around my page, and it helped me really quickly plan out all of the sections of my website. And then there's a few more things, but I don't think I'm going to go through that because we do have time. Okay, that's the link to my website. Okay, section B of the second part are my game projects. And this is the tasks, roles, and teamwork that I did so far at the University of Abertay. So I'm going to stop talking for a second and let you guys watch this trailer for the first game that we've made. Okay. Yeah, don't worry about the audio. It's just background music. But um, good to know that I can keep talking while the video's playing. Okay. Basically, this game is a god game, sort of like underground simulator survival sort of thing. Um, and we decided to do a narrative heavy mini game situation sort of game, because at the time that was how we fulfilled our brief for a god game uh, project. And I really did enjoy working on this. Do I move forward? Okay. I did enjoy working on this, and I juggled a lot of hats for this project. So I was the character artist, so I drew all of the main characters for the visual novel style sort of presentation of the game. And then I designed the entire UI. And funny story about the UI, on week 9 of 11 weeks total, and week 11 is when we go gold, is when we publish it for real. On week 9, the professors had a feedback, and they said, we can actually tell who drew what assets in your game, because it seems like Courtney and Matt, the two artists, have used different color palettes. And up to that point, we did not see that I was using all of the cooler, darker tones for all of my drawings. And Matt was using these like vibrant, dark, rich greens and oranges instead of like red and blue. So we made the executive decision for me to redraw every single UI asset. And I will tell you, drawing it the second time around is much quicker, but it was a pain. So try to figure stuff like that out way before you get to gold, if possible. And then I also wrote the script for the dialogue because I also drew the characters. So I knew what sort of personalities I want to give each of them. And because we were presenting the story kind of like a visual novel sort of thing, the words that I gave them helped explain the world that we were trying to build with the game. Also, when we were playtesting, we figured out some of the pacing of the game is a little sporadic and is a little too quick. So I made additional dialogue, input boxes, yes, no, clicking sort of things, just things to slow down the pacing of our game, because otherwise our whole game just went by in a flash and people didn't really know what was going on. So I did not know that was a problem that people ran into while designing games, but it was really interesting to learn that that was something that you have to design and plan for. And then game mechanics. I created the combat little mini game mechanic for the first challenge in game, and that was really fun. So some of the UI that I had to redraw from scratch. So all of the text elements, all of the boxes, all of the icons, I redid them the last 2 weeks of class. And that was a lot. And just to show you guys like how intensive the design of like art can be, came up with like 6, 7, 8 different title screens, different ways to just lay out the exact same information. And our team had to decide on which one was best for a mobile application. So obviously, not the picture on the top left. We ended up going with the bottom right corner, but some design worked better than others on mobile. And here's some more examples of things that had to be revised. You can see how my characters were blue and red, and the rest of the game were like, you know, green and orange. So I had to redraw all of them. And I learned how to do sprite sheets as well. This was very, very taxing. And I learned, yes, I still don't like animation, but it was a good skill to practice. And then redid the cutscene. So each of them have a more realistic sort of environment background to complement the artwork of the other artists on the team. We decided to go with his art style over mine because simply he did 10 levels of layers for each environment to create a parallax effect on each of the cave systems in the game. And it is just impossible to redraw that in such a short amount of time. So yes, we made the executive decision to redo all of my stuff. And I think that was the right choice to make because our game thrived from all the changes that we made last minute. And here's another example of redoing assets, this time character art. So you can see my style was very stylistic, very non-humanoid in nature. And then, you know, the revised version, they're human. They got legs and clothing instead of like cloaks. And because it was a visual novel sort of game, we had to draw different poses for each of the characters. And well, I had to draw them. And that was really fun because it was learning how to just save time on using layers to do what you want, right? Okay, so that's the first game. Second game, thankfully, I was not a permanent member on this team. This game is called First Step to the Gods, and it is a Bloom Tower defense sort of match 3 hybrid game made for the PC. And the team was slightly toxic. So it was 15 different people working on this game, and it kind of divided along country lines because my university, it's known internationally. So a lot of international students come here. So what happened was it divided up between like Chinese exchange students and then everyone else. and they had their own WeChat, which was unfortunate because there was a lot of talking behind backs. And so when I was added onto the team, I was thrown into like politics immediately, and that's not the right way to have a team. So if you guys are ever having problems with teamwork, please try to talk it out from the beginning and work on resolving those issues as quickly as possible, because by the time I had entered onto the scene, it was very, very hard to make some of these changes because like everyone was just very stubborn and just fed up with each other. So what I did was I just went in and I fixed how the game looked. I rehauled the UI and then I remade the cutscene. This team also only had one artist, which was not great because in a team of 15 people, you need more than one person to do the artwork. And the artist was not cooperative many times. So I did end up having to redo most, if not all, of the art that this person drew. But I couldn't help with every single thing. So there was another artist brought in to do the background art. And this is a conversation we had. This is something that the previous artist made. I remember when I was talking through this presentation earlier, I could not describe how this person drew. So this is a screenshot of the interaction that I had with this person. And this was their final finished product. And that's not acceptable at a master's level. So what I did was I redrew it for them and the team used that instead. So this is the revised cussing. And their game is kind of like a mythology-based Roman-esque god game, where ultimately you play as these like Greek gods trying to conquer each level of balloon tower defensing all the way to the end of the map, where you go traverse through the 3 different landscapes of like heaven, and then desert, or like island situation, and then hell. But yeah, this is cutscene redrawn, more cutscene stuff. And then I redid their UI assets because they were using props from online and just, placeholders. And I did this as well. The other artist did the background art, which is really cool looking. And yeah, the game was a lot more intensive than the project that I had worked on for a semester. And so it required a lot more paneling, specific icons and assets and boxes and stuff. And so did all of these. And yeah, one thing that I also learned with UI development is if you make one template, you can use it all over the place. So you can see how my design carried out throughout the game. Now I'll talk about this game, which is what I'm working on currently in class. We're currently on spring break, which is why I'm able to give this presentation today. So we haven't added all of the assets that we created, but they are ready to go. And once we go back to school, it'll look different. But this is the current build that we have. It does have audio, but I've heard that you guys can't hear it. So I'm just going to be explaining what's happening. So this game is an AR simulation / tour, guided tour. So what the programmer is doing now is they've opened up their camera and they're in the location in Dundee where the game takes place. And it's an AR sort of thing. So you just move your phone around to get to the different environments and scenes. And the purpose of this game or experience is to teach you about a typical woman's life as they are accused of being a witch in Scotland in the 1600s. So this is actually a game that was given to us by a client, and they wanted a monument. But because we're a game like design, like create development course, our class also wanted us to make it into a gamified experience. So I'll talk more about how we did that, but you can see the assets popping up in each of the locations in Dundee. My throat. Okay. Oh, that was too far. Okay. So quickly, what I've done for this game so far is, oh my God, I've only got 5 minutes. Okay, I'll go really fast. But basically, I did way more design on this game than art. We have to figure out how to not minimize this and characterize the whole witches stereotype, and we didn't know how to really do it without cheapening the whole experience. So we decided not to actually have a game, but to make it a guided tour. And I wrote the narration, the script. I designed the world and made the asset list for blah, 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 all the stuff that's in the game. I also did do some artwork because our lead artist did get sick, but yeah, this is the UI that I've made that will be in the game later on. And here are all of the characters I drew for our experience. They'll just be like rotated towards the camera wherever the viewer is looking, so they don't have to be 3D. I didn't know how to show you guys design, so I just took screenshots, but I wrote a script with dialogue, and I had to number it because we do have voice actors for this game, and there's also a design document, a typical design document with all the stuff and more specifications in the design document, storytelling, and explanation of how to draw in the style that I proposed and was accepted for the whole group. I go into specifics like use this brush at this size, how to do the layers, how to add the shadows, how to texture each of your assets. And then here's a visual example of how I did some of the drawings for the characters. So now really quickly, game jams. So game jams are a really fun time to learn a whole bunch of random stuff and do things that you normally don't do. So for me, I did a lot of game design documents. I balanced a lot of games, and this is actually the hardest part of game jams because 90% of the time, the programmers are coding all the way up to the last 30-hour, 1 hour period of a game jam. And that's really when you have time to balance the game. And that's not a lot of time to balance an entire game. So you just kind of gotta like do with what you have and do your best. And then also making tutorials. That is grossly understated in game jams. People don't explain how to play games made in a short amount of time. So people don't have good experiences playing them. I also did all sorts of 2D art. I did some programming, and don't forget to make itch.io pages for submissions for sure. Here are some screenshots of some of the game jams that I've participated in. This is actually one of the more fun. I did this for the Global Game Jam this year. We were not able to submit a workable build by the deadline, but it was a pick up after your child, a look for all of the different toys in this playground sort of thing, and pick up the baby, the 3D baby that was chasing after you in 4 minutes or less, or else this Karen parent character here will get progressively madder at you and you will lose the game. But yeah, I do have more videos, but we don't have time, is what I've heard. So I'm just gonna keep going. And all of this information is on my itch.io page. So if you are curious or want to play through some of these, just feel free to go visit there. So really quickly, what have I learned? I've learned that at the end of the day, you really do need to be working in teams, and you do need to be proactively making games. The more, the better. Figure out what comes to you easily and practice it a lot. For me, that's writing, art, and design, everything creative. For others, it could be making shaders, doing level design, doing tech art, coding, or even like programming, making combat systems, whatever you're good at, just practice it a lot. the more knowledge you have of every single field, the better you can design. This is more of a game designer tip. And yeah, obviously participate in game jams, make your own personal projects if you don't have that. And lastly, if you do love games and you like team management, or you have some other sort of background that you don't know how to apply to games in general, but you really want to be in this field, look into other roles that are not standard, like producer roles or screenwriting or sound design. Like, you don't have to have a games background to be in the games industry, because if you're specialized and you're good at something, people will need it in a game. And then obviously work is never done. I still have a bullet list of things I need to do after most games get submitted. My checklist includes things like tighten up your gameplay and game balance, because that always gets neglected. Add gameplay that's been cut due to time and resource constraints. This one actually never really happens, because that's kind of like a team effort, and you got to get the whole team back together to work on something, and people's schedules don't line up easily. You also should be creating analyses on your websites or portfolio or whatever, and then you need to add your projects and make it compact and digestible for employers, right? So game dev is obviously hard work. Promoting yourself also takes time. So don't feel like if you've just made an itch.io page, you're good to go. You need to design your portfolio specifically for employers. Don't think of what your family and friends would say, because they will just say, wow, this is so cool. How did you do that? Think of what someone looking for a tech art or programmer for a AAA or indie game company would say about your portfolio. So modify your works to stand out visually and grab their attention. With game projects, you gotta have a balance between descriptions and art. So don't overwhelm the person looking at your website with just walls and walls of text, but also don't just have pictures with no explanations next to them. So find a balance. And then hindsight is 2020. These are just some of the traps that I fell into. So use Squarespace if you're not trying to become a front-end web developer, because that's so much more programming that you don't get to work on a game for. If I had known how much time it would take to make a good website, I probably definitely would have used Squarespace to focus on presenting myself rather than presenting a beautiful website. I also would have written the summaries for games I participated in as soon as they finished, because all of that information would definitely still be fresh in my head. Revisiting a game jam months after the fact is really hard, and you don't want to do that. Another tip for web dev, use GitHub's hosting services and not Firebase. For some reason, it just takes way too long to load a website. And lastly, I should have made more games with Unity before I applied to this graduate degree or even to jobs. Not knowing how to implement things in any game engine is crippling, and you gotta work on that yourself and like catch back up in your own time. And then lastly, some tips and
I'm gonna
tricks.
actually stop you there.
Apply to jobs with specific resumes, work hard, shorten everything that you have, and personalize your elevator pitch. And then for higher education and in general, obviously try not to graduate during COVID-19. Don't procrastinate working on your future, and don't burn out in undergrad. Burning out is something that every single person in game dev will be experiencing or has already experienced. It's not a badge of honor, and it will lead to really bad procrastination and like mental blocks and practices moving forward. And especially if you want to get a grad degree or a PhD, you got to get that ball rolling for another 2 to 4 years. So
right.
yeah, that's my whole presentation.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so real quick, just a couple of questions because we've got to move on. So the first question, I think on your board game, what was the console that you were making it for?
It was for mobile, but we did make a PC version in case people wanted to play it from the itch.io page.
All right. And then for the red character, somebody says, was that inspired by Journey?
Actually, yes. At the beginning, we didn't really flesh out how the game was supposed to feel and look like, and so we were just taking inspiration from everywhere, and that's what I came up with inspiration from other games.
And our last question was do you think it'd be more useful to make a bunch of game jam games to flesh out a portfolio versus working on one or two larger projects?
That really depends on your skill level. I would say if you know how to make a comprehensive game from start to finish with like all of the programming and arts and design that comes with it, do that. That would be super cool. But if you don't and you have limited time and you don't want to fail a project and never complete it, do game jams. It's easier to learn things when you have other people working with you.
All right, thank you so much. Big round of applause. Is there any contact information or anything you want to share if people can get a hold of you, ask you more questions?
Sure. Yeah. If you guys want to contact me, just go
Well,
to.
they can go to the website, I suppose.
Yeah. Or my email, my old school email, cvs393@utosa.edu. I still look at that email all the time. So yeah, feel free to drop me a little thing.
All right, thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem.